Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Farah Friedrich, and I am from the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I'm a Higher Education Advisory Council member, and I will be the moderator for the session. We are super excited to welcome you here, where we will be learning about the Summit Events app from Thad Dahlberg, also from the University of St. Thomas. And we've also had Ryan Blake made as a presenter, so he can assist with questions since he has been a huge part of this project. While Thad is doing his presentation, I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A, which can be found just to the right of the presentation screen. So feel free to put any questions or anything there. And otherwise, let me turn it over to Thad and he can go ahead and get started.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. As Farah said, I'm Thad Dahlberg, and I'm a senior software engineer at the University of St. Thomas. And you can see different ways to get a hold of me up there. You can definitely email me at thad.dahlberg@stthomas.edu. There's all the other venues you can get at me. And the very most interesting one at the end there is a GitHub link where you can follow me where I write code and see what I'm up to. You can see below that this is the ecosystem we have set up at St. Thomas. I am tangentially aware of most of this stuff, but if you want to know more, Farah is the expert in the room to talk to you about this and all the different systems we have going on inside St. Thomas with Salesforce. And we're definitely trying to be a connected campus from cradle to grave. That sounds morbid, but we're working towards that. A little bit about St. Thomas. We're over 10,000 students. We have 3 campuses, one in Rome. I've never met anyone who worked at Rome, but someday I believe it exists. You can see all the particulars about the things we have going on at St. Thomas. I want to draw your attention to the lower corner where it says all for the common good, which really informs a lot of what we try to do with Summit events and sharing out our technology through the open source community. Yeah. Oh, and if you take note there's pre-pandemic Thad and there's during pandemic Thad pictures in the corner. If you do the trailhead on public speaking, they'll tell you got to tell everyone what they're going to learn right away. And here it is. We're going to talk about what FUBU is and why Summit Events is FUBU. We're going to talk about what Summit Events app is and what does open source mean for Summit Events and how we got involved with that. And then how you can get involved with that and be engaged with the project. And to give credit where credit is due, Ryan came up with this title. I did a little research, found the story of FUBU really interesting. It stands for us by us, and it's a fashion brand that really was celebrating the Black hip hop community in Queens area. And Damon Johns, who started it, you may remember him from Shark Tank, started with $40 and now he's got six billion in sales. It's a really interesting story of like starting from a garage and then escalating. One of the things, of course, about escalating is more than the community they were working for started to wear the fashion they were making, and they were more than happy about that. As the co-founder Carl says, because we were of where we came from, an African-American neighborhood, most of what we did started there, but we now realize those weren't the only people wearing our clothes, and they were happy with that. And that really tracks with Summit Events and us. And so how is Summit Events like FUBU? It's actually Fahi for higher ed, by higher ed, but that doesn't sound as good as FUBU. Like Damon John, we started with $40, well, maybe a bit more, and we evaluated a lot of event solutions. We had stakeholders in the room as different, we had a vendor showing us, or a consultant showing us different vendor solutions they'd found around on the App Exchange. Stakeholders often left and said, what about this thing I do in my event that's so unique to my event that I need to track? And a lot of times the vendor would say, yeah, that is unique. We'll do that for X amount of dollars. And in the end, it became kind of prohibitively expensive for us. And we wanted the world for $40. So we moved on and we started to build on what we knew. We had a pre-established set of events and visits that we did on St. Thomas campus that we knew worked through, the amount of time we've been doing them. We had a sense of what our audience was and how we wanted to engage with them. We knew for one thing they didn't want to like log into a portal and spend a lot of time to come visit a campus. We had functioning old apps, which I was initially brought on to St. Thomas to usher into the new age. They were Java apps, but they did the job. They took intake forms on the web and had some back-end work that could be done with them. And we wanted to maintain our tradition of personal attention, which is important at St. Thomas. And then we started to grow beyond our community. Other schools kind of started asking questions. We started to learn that nonprofits weren't too far off from what we were doing and needing. And then we tried to become an enterprise solution, which is not really FUBU fashion brand because they stayed true to their fashion, but we kind of took away maybe some of the things that were very St. Thomas and made them a little bit more generally accessible to a bigger audience. So what did St. Thomas have in our current system pre Salesforce and Summit events? And spoiler, we called it UST events to begin with. We had branded web forms that people could sign up to without logging in and sign up for an event. We had contact matching that happened manually after the fact to our system of record banner. We had recurring events every day, or most every day, for daily visits, and we had the need for a person to tailor their event, like if they wanted to see a coach, a football coach, or a engineering professor, or they wanted to attend a class, or they wanted lunch, they could choose and kind of curate their day. We wanted to make sure receipt with emails, and we wanted to be able to make itineraries, and that was kind of a manual process that we did after the fact. Some large events had less information we needed, so we needed to be able to scale up and down. We had overnight events. We wanted to track attendance, and we wanted to be able to generate a parking pass so people can park on the campus, which is quite a premium at St. Thomas. We wanted to be able to tie programs to audiences and programs so we could feature them on different parts of the web. We wanted people to sign up or to tell us what high school or college they went to so we could attach them to the right admissions counselor. And we wanted to surface the events on the web in a branded sort of way. So what were we using before Salesforce and Summit events, UST events? All the usual suspects, plus our homegrown Java apps. And the problem with that is highlighted in that cartoon over there. It basically says you had all these people using these different events apps, storing their event data in their spreadsheets or their own databases, maybe acting upon it, maybe not acting upon it. But oftentimes, never sharing it, that's for sure, with the broader community at St. Thomas. So with Salesforce, we knew we wanted a holistic system of engagement, so we needed to fix that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about object architecture that appears inside Salesforce, and then we're going to do some demoing, and we'll talk a little bit about the page progression that happens in Summit events. So when we initially started our system of engagement process with Salesforce, we had a consultant come in, Peter Larson, who was working with Exceed at the time. He came to the front office of the admissions and saw how they were intaking students and what kind of information they could meaningfully gather from a student who was arriving on campus. And he came up with this initial trinity of objects that made Summit events eventually. Basically, a lot of this gets lost on nonprofits because they don't understand the instance part of this, but we have an event object that really is setting up the look, feel, all the different questions you're trying to ask, the messaging you're trying to get across. That's all set up in the event object. And then the instance becomes the actual date of the event. So think visits every day. You don't want to clone a bunch of data to make the visits happen every day. You want to have that all set up, and then the instance becomes the day. It's a very simple object. It's date, time. There are some overrides in there for weird instances that we worked into the plan, and then it also the instance makes sure to measure capacity. And then hanging off the instance is the registration record, which is our interaction with that, anything they filled out with that registrant, anything they filled out on the registration form, and some after office information we might gather about that particular registrant. So we're going to look at a simple event right now that just follows this simple architecture in Summit Events. You can use your QR code scanner, or you can go to summitevents.org or summitevt.org/HED-event-1. There'll be a 2 and a 3 in the future, so keep that in mind. And you can go to this particular event. You can fill it out. It's in a development org. The next event that I'm going to show you, which is way more complex, will have more of we're going to actually use this as an engagement thing if you want to. There'll be a toggle at the bottom that says I'm not really filling out this form to be engaged with, but I just want to see how this works. But go ahead and go here and fill out the form, and I will show you what it looks like on my end. This is the wrong one. There's the simple form. So the very base minimum that you can actually gather from Summit Events with one instance and event and things, there are things you can ask questions for, and I'll show you that in a second, but we always require first name, last name, and email. So this is a very simple event that only gathers that and then goes to the confirmation page. And I wanted to actually show you in the org here, the simple event. First of all, I'm on the event record, Summit Events, and then you can see the instance right there. But we see the start and end date of the event, which is really just the span of all the instances. And in this particular case, we have 2 instances. But one quick thing I want to show you is that Summit Events is templatable. So I'm going to switch this to the St. Thomas template for a second here. And you can see that it immediately switches to another template. These are Visualforce page templates. So you may have to get involved with a little bit of tech to get them done, but the very simple template that ships with Summit Events is called General SLDS, Salesforce Lightning Design. And if we switch over to that, you'll see that it's, a very blank page, but has all the Salesforce Lightning Design things in place for it. I'm going to switch back to the HEDreamin22 template here. So on the main object, you have the ability to enter your event description, which is, if you look over here, appears at the top of that page. A short description, which appears in something that we call feeds, which I'm not going to get into in this session, but please investigate and talk to us about that later. There's a footer you can have appear on the bottom of all the event pages. And then you want to have a message that says this event has reached capacity or is gone. It's past date. Then you can also see that we have instances here. I could see some registrations are already coming in over here. If I look at the instance, you can see I have the start and end date. We have a nice thing that presents a QR code that you can use to point people at the event. These are the overrides I talked about, but we're not going to get into those either. So that's a very simple event. You have the event, which just describes how the event looks. And then you have the instance that describes the time it is. So we'll go back to our slides here, and we'll talk a little bit about the growth of Summit Events beyond these 3 objects. So you can see highlighted in blue there that the 3 objects, event, instance, and registration, are highlighted. One event can have multiple instances and multiple registrations attached to each instance. Some of the new objects that appeared, and I have to warn you that this is a pre-release and a safe harbor kind of statement where you're actually seeing a branch that is going to be released hopefully within the next month at some point. But you're seeing some features that aren't in the installable version of Summit Events right now. And in particular, the question object is one that is brand new. So in this object architecture, you have the event, which you can actually now define questions that are free-form. They all map to the registration record, but you get to write what the question is, what the options are, and then you can map it to a field, whether it be a field that we packaged inside Summit Events or a field that you create custom. You can map it over to the registration and have it recorded there. Email is a way to facilitate the email receiving. We have it so that in the event, as you register, as you start registering, you're in the started status. And then as you progress all the way to the end, you become registered. And each status that we have, and we also have other ones like confirmed and things like that, but you can set an email to fire on each of the status changes. So a no-brainer would be when someone is registered, fire off an email. This object controls what those emails look like and the messaging in them and when they fire in the process of registration. And they're transactional. If you're going to like promote an event, or you're going to like, maybe tell everyone the event's coming up in mass, go to your mass email system and don't use this. This is going to count towards your org limits in email sending. Appointment type is how you define, like I was talking about earlier, where we have specialized visits at St. Thomas where we want the student to be able to curate their day. And so we want them to be able to say, hey, I want to have lunch with my counselor. I want to meet with my financial aid person. I want to go to a class about architecture or something like that. And so I don't even know if we have that at St. Thomas architecture, maybe not. So this allows you to define those kinds of appointments that happen on the event. So those question, email, event, appointment type all kind of inform the questions, the things available to the Summit Events app or during registration. Then during registration, you have some options there, like we have incorporated a payment architecture. Payments by design aren't inside Summit Events as a package, they live outside. So you'd have to either build out your own payment gateway code, or you'd have to get a vendor to do that for you. But we do have a way to receipt payments, and we have a structure where we have the payment receipt. We have fees which kind of attach themselves to different parts of the events, and right now they're only attached to the actual event themselves, but and donations, which is another thing we have going on. But we have anticipated having appointments having fees attached to them. Like if, for instance, during the event, someone wants to eat lunch, but it costs $40 as an addition to the event, that we'd want to be able to add a fee onto the actual appointment type. Fee allocation is how the fee is like routed on your business office end. It's a very simple object at the point at this point in packaging, and it's meant to be that way so that you can build it out for your business office needs, maybe your routing numbers or whatever internal numbers you use to funnel money. The appointment object there looks up to the appointment type, but it's the response of that student. And the reason it's in a different object is, for instance, if we have someone wanting to visit the football coach, we want to be able to actually treat that as an appointment, assign the person they're going to meet, the time they're going to meet that person, and then we want to confirm it. So it has a little bit extra feature in that we want this ability in the office end to like build out whether this appointment has been successfully arranged. And that is where itinerary generation comes in, where we build an itinerary of appointments. This is a Visualforce project. I know a lot of people are like, Visualforce pages are dead, but they're actually really useful in this case. We do have plans to eventually maybe do Lightning Web version of this, but Visualforce page allowed us very easily to use sites, which is a free part of the Salesforce platform. And we also, with Summit Events, kind of wanted to keep the bar to using it very low cost-wise. And we also wanted it all to be very native. So if we look at the page progression, all the ones in gray can be skipped, like in that simple event we looked at first. Since we hadn't defined additional questions or guest registrations or appointments or donations, all those, and we don't have to hit submit because we know everything's on one page. We just want to say, this is my information, I'm done. But if you define anything else, this page progression starts to happen. The additional questions page is the one, it's kind of the new feature where you can actually build out as many questions as you want and map them to the registration record. Guest registration is a way for the registrant to actually register their attendees. And this is also new, but it's also tied in with that question object in that you can define what questions you ask a guest, so that you will get the right kind of information. Like obviously you might want first, last name, and email so you can tie it, but it actually, the guest registration actually becomes a registration record, just like the registrant's record does, but it looks up to that registrant. So you can see all the guests they've registered, but it also allows you to check them in as a real guest when they come to campus or wherever your event is. Appointment sessions, those are the appointment types and the appointments I talked about, meeting a coach, eating lunch. Donations is probably needs some TLC, but it's there, it's working. It shows you a list of options of what you can actually, you can have a drop down of suggested donations or a customized registration for, or a customized amount. And then the fee allocations appear there, so you could have different allocations of that particular donation. Submit just kind of summarizes everything you've done: fees, appointments, guests you've registered, all get summarized there. If it's okay, you hit, yep, I'm ready to go, and you hit submit. If there's a payment gateway defined, you'll jump out of Summit Events to that payment gateway. I have some code that actually is working right now with UPay, TouchNet, partner ID stuff that works in the system where it jumps out of Summit Events and takes care of that stuff and receipts itself back into Summit Events in that payment receipt. And then you move on to the confirmation page if that is in play. But this again is very theoretical because no one is using the payment, and you would have to have some external help setting up a payment gateway. So on to the more complex event. So we have, Ryan and I talked about this, and we decided we'd actually make these real events. So there are 2 dates, and what our plan is just to do a quick demo of Summit Events and make it open a lot to Q&A. So if you have a lot of questions right now and we don't get to them in this particular session, sign up for one of those 2 events. And as I said, you'll see in a second, there's a way not to make us not bother you. So I'm going to jump out to those events now. Let's see. Refresh my org so it doesn't go dead on me. So here's the complex event. And there's a lot more going on in this one, but we'll go back out to look at the event. So ignore the cost. It's not real. We're not going to charge anyone. There's no payment gateway attached to this. If you're not interested in going to this event or us bothering you about this, we're not going to make you go, of course. Just say your interest is not so much. I'm just filling out this form to see it in action. But you can see here that we've asked a few more questions on the first page. And if you look at, Ryan made new layouts that I'm getting used to. So we had a lot of things that we did ask at St. Thomas, and they're kind of hard-coded toggles right now. So for instance, I wanted to ask your birth date on that page. I would go to ask on the toggle here. And one of the new features that's coming out in our next release is the ability to, some of the stuff was very hard-coded in our Visualforce pages. Now you have the ability to kind of change the labeling of those questions. So if I hit save and go back to that event, it should be asking me my birth date there. So I'm not going to make you fill that out, so I'm going to turn that off again. Did I make that even required? Ask birth date. So as we fill that out, my full name is Thaddeus, so let's do that. You have the ability to make any of these preferred or Summit events, of course. I'm very interested. Okay, so this is the question object. So I've asked a few questions here. I'm a developer there. To highlight the question object, you can see, let's see, we're on the right, yeah. Here's the question object. Let's see, school you represent. Let's take a look at that one. So you can see here that I've had I was able to write the question text that I wanted. I can write instructions or error assistance. So if it's required, you could say, you can write your custom requirement code here, like, please fill this out. We need it. Help desk is what comes up in the little bubble, and then you have a display order. You can do required. This is an interesting feature where you might want to fill in an answer to a question, but not actually ask the question. There was some use case for that, but you can make it invisible and fill in a actual existing value for that, or default value. So there's a lot of options here. We're not even going to look up. The lookup relationship allows you to look up to other records in your org that you've made available to the guest user in this case. So be warned, where you could actually build something to we'll be using it to look up our school and college information. So all this stuff allows you to make a guest register or an additional question, but you also have the ability to either apply this question to both registrant and guest, or guest. So these are you'll see in a moment that the question object is the same for both of those features. So if I go on to the next one, you can see I can fill in a guess. And these are the question object to find questions I've asked. And you can do a variety of different questions. You can do pick lists, as you saw. There was the lookup field and other things like that. So if this is a feature I've been working with that we'll probably have to talk about, but you often hit next and then you lose this. So I'm going to have to put a pop-up or something there to make it so that you don't accidentally do that. But you can keep adding guests, and you can see I had set a limit on the org to only allow for 5 guests. So you can put whatever limit you want there. And this is the appointments we talked about, where we talked about people maybe wanting to go to lunch or something with a person. And this one I particularly did for you, if you're interested, to maybe highlight what you're kind of interested in summit events going. Some of these features don't exist quite yet, or need some TLC, or are in process, but it would be interesting to know what you're interested in. Our emails, for instance, are using classic letterheads right now. It'd be much better not to be in that space, because there's a lot of nice new interfaces for filling in record information on a receiving email. So that's something we have in the works, but I'm interested to hear what you guys are interested in. So go ahead and fill that out. You just hit add, and you can hit remove. If you're on a phone, it'll add below your list of options. Here's the donation page. Please, I noticed when I did this, I put 1 million in, and we have a limit on the amount. I don't think anyone would donate 1 million on a web form, but who knows? And of course, you want to give it to the Summit Events Foundation. And if you look back on the Summit Events, the complex event, there's a donation tab over here. This is where you would set up that information. So you have all the allocations. You can build a pick list of the amounts you want, and then you have to make sure to click that you want it to display. You also have titling and description options, which I didn't mention, but there's a let's see, page details. There's, for every page, you have the ability to add that title and that descriptive element, and it can include pictures if you want and things like that, because it's mainly just a Salesforce rich text field. So I got the submit here in the summary, and if I hit submit, then it completes the registration, brings you to the confirmation page. We also have cancel and all sorts of other things, but I'm going to move on because we got a lot more to cover. I hope you enjoyed that little demo, though. It was pretty full featured, and again, Safe Harbor. Some of those features aren't going to be available quite yet, but we hope to very soon. So you're looking at a feature branch that is going to be evaluated and then fixed up and be ready to go in our package soon. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the presentation page.
And I just wanted to pipe in and say you're at 10 minutes left.
Yep,
so
I see that.
Perfect.
There'll be a lot of people I forget to mention on this origin story, but I'm going to go through it quick. We built UST events after our evaluation of different offers or from the App Exchange in 2018. It was kind of running in 2019. We started to meet with Kim Katzenmeyer, who was our customer success architect, and she had other institutions that were interested in this and had us demo it a bit, and she hooked us up with some other Salesforce.org people that helped me on along the way, like Carlos Villalpando and Luke Parrott come to mind. They helped me out with some of the early coding to make it available to be used as an open source product. We presented at the Higher Ed Summit in San Diego. At that point, we were showing UST events. We intended a Salesforce.org open source sprint in Philadelphia. We did not come as UST events or Summit events at the time, but we were tipping our toe into what that was. And I think you should all look into that. It's a great experience. You get to either work on Summit events, or there's a variety of other open source products that you basically collaborate for 2 days on. There are mini ones. Corey O'Brien in the room knows all about them. She'd love to invite you to them, I'm sure. In 2020, we refactored UST events to Summit Events app, which we named it Summit Events because someone on our team, Jim Hubert, who's with Foundation Partners, had some marketing background. He's like, hey, let's still make this a lot about St. Thomas, which we're on historic Summit Avenue in St. Paul. We're in the Summit League now for D1. Kind of a sports agnostic. That doesn't mean much to me, but it's what's happening. So it had some meaning and it also has meaning for a lot of events. A lot of events are called Summit. In 2020, Summit Events becomes an official project of the open source sprints. So we got full engagement. People were helping us with this project. People like you, bouncing their ideas off of it and letting me know what I chose wrong about, which I love. I love the fact that, in like my quote at the beginning was, if I build it, they'll tell me what they want. And that's been true for me my whole time. Like, I met with admissions, I showed them UST events. They told me what was wrong about it, but they would have gone down a rabbit hole of discussion if I hadn't showed them a prototype to begin with. So I really appreciate, before we get into the packaging stage, someone to look at it and say, hey, you named that weird. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. And even that's valuable. So if you have no like technical expertise, please come to a Salesforce.org open source sprint and contribute that, because it's gold. 2021, we passed security review, and we're actually a package you can install now. We're not on the App Exchange. We haven't listed there on purpose because we weren't ready to like support that level of engagement, but you can go to install.salesforce.org and install us through the meta deploy app of the Salesforce.org open source commons, which we'll probably stick with. So yeah, now we're officially part of the open source commons. Salesforce.org has got all the copyrights on the code, and we're happy to be there. It's a great place to be. Why we open sourced? A lot of the reasons are because we wanted continuity. For instance, a lot of times as a developer, you will jump into a different organization and inherit someone else's code, and you have to start from ground zero. And maybe that happens in the admissions office. We know that happens where admissions counselors leave, but they don't know how to use the thing that you built for them. So with open sourcing, we can do documentation. We can have code continuity through other people being involved with the development of the project. We can document processes we couldn't do on our own, with the time constraints we had. And what I really would like to point out is that I think higher ed just shares things, which is the beauty of working in higher ed, I think. And then, of course, our mission statement at St. Thomas is all for the common good. Some of the obstacles were we had to go through the provost, we had to get legal discussions involved, whether we'd be liable or anything. And this was in the early days. A lot of people like Jace, Brian, and Salesforce.org were really helpful at this point with talking that through with me. And then we had to, like, I call it tearing out everything I love about Summit events. and making it more into an enterprise thing, meaning that a lot of the features I'd built out in UST events didn't make sense to anyone else outside of St. Thomas. So we had to reimagine those in a general sense and make them make more sense to others and be usable to others, but still maintain the functionality we needed. And we're almost back to that point where we have parity with the UST events and Summit events, but we still have just a tiny bit to go. How we open source, we engage with the Open Source Commons. Corey O'Brien was great help with that. We went to the salesforce.org open source sprints. And if you have an idea, that's something that can come up in open source sprints as well. And I encourage you to come and let it be known what you have going on and what you want to share. Salesforce.org has a suite of beautiful tools that help us open source. One of them is Cumulus and CI, which is a way of developers to spin up Scratch orgs. But then they also have this other product called Mateco, which lets you build orgs based on the code that I build or other developers build, and be able to evaluate it by just clicking a button saying, I need an org with Summit events installed, with all the data installed, and then I want to just be able to evaluate what's going on. So it really, Salesforce.org has built this structure to help us to meet everybody where they're at with their skill set. And so that's what's beautiful about the sprints and about the tools they've made. So their tools are so important to me in the way I develop, but there are other tools that make way more sense to someone who's not me. So get involved with that. Here's a little nerdy slide that I won't go over too much, but it talks about Cumulus CI. I always call it the open source glue, but it combines the Salesforce command line and Git repositories is where you keep your code, and it can be revisioned, kind of like you have a Word doc where you have notes and revisions. It stores it. Git stores code that way, so you can go back in time and forward in time, but it allows multiple developers to work on the same thing. Cumulus CI allows each of those developers to have their own org with Summit events in it to code against, and then bring that code back to the main repository and share with everyone. And so it's really just amazing. How can you get involved? Well, I know you want to know. Follow us everywhere. Here's some links. The summitevt.org/OSC will bring you to the open source commons sprints if you want to find out more about that. Summitevent.org/trailblazer will bring you to our Trailblazer community. You can follow us on YouTube, or you can follow us even on GitHub and see what code changes are happening with inside Summit events. So take notes of those and please engage. We love to hear from you, and you can ask questions at our Trailblazer community at any time. We'll try to be super responsive. Here's the install meta deploy, what it looks like. If you go to summitevt.org/install, it'll bring you right to our page, but you can just go to install.salesforce.org to see all the different options, including ones you know well, EDA and NPSP. We have a lot of openings in our team. There's a quick summary of all the different things. Engagement is kind of scalable and up to you, but we do have certain people in places and certain holes, as you can see. The goal with Salesforce.org and the open source commons is to have a lot of people involved to keep that continuity going. And here's some more of our people who are engaged. And I want to say thank you. That was a whirlwind, and I have 1 minute and 24 seconds left. I don't know if there's any questions or anything.
Yeah, there is one question. Ryan's been doing a great job of answering. We still have one outstanding. Oh, it looks like Ryan just answered. Never mind.
Oh, good.
Ryan, were there any that you wanted to speak out about? Or?
I was going to say, I think it'd be worth talking about. Well, there was one specifically about if St. Thomas is still using UST events. If you want to speak to that, and then I would say if you can speak to the guest user access piece after that quickly.
Oh, right. St. Thomas is partially using Summit events. We're still moving orgs like everyone is. So we have an EDA org and we have the old org we came from, and admissions is definitely in the old org. So we're transitioning, and the idea is everyone will be using Summit events. Our engagement people are using it. They really love, I didn't even go over this. They have contact matching and lead matching in Salesforce, using Salesforce matching rules. which is great. What was the other question? Oh, the guest user.
Guest user.
That was a huge thing. To be able to engage with the guest user was hard. I had to go through a lot of in the security review. It took a while, a lot of back and forth, because I had to explain how we were going about engaging with the guest user and our permissions, and we did achieve it. So it's approved by Salesforce at this point, and we have a multi-stage event registration that allows a guest user to go there without logging in and be able to do it.
There was another one in there that I'll just throw out quickly. I know we're over time, but where you can install it, you can go to meta deploy, and I'm just going to put it in the session chat here.
Yep.
But this is where you can install it into a sandbox org, and then the YouTube page has a video, it's like a 7-minute video on how to actually configure it. So.
Yep, and be warned that some of the things you saw today aren't in there, but they will be there very soon with the next installment.
All right, and we are over time. We will be sharing the recordings, the session recordings, and I believe slide decks after Higher Ed Dreaming is over. But you or myself or Ryan, if you have any questions, or be sure to pop out to the Trailhead group and follow it there. Otherwise, what's next? There's a lot more content coming your way. So if you want to head back to the main stage or the agenda to find your next session, you can join a networking table to talk with others or visit the sponsors in the booth tab. If you have any issues or questions and need help, go to the booth tab and you can ask, find the Higher Ed Dreamin22 help desk. Otherwise, thank you so much for everyone for coming, and we'll see you in another session, hopefully.
Thank you.